Chapter 4. The Slippery Downward Slope. When the alarm went off Monday morning, I glared at it. Could I make it through work today? Did I even want to? If I didn't go, what would I do for money? The questions continued to parade in my mind while I forced my legs out of bed. Without even thinking, my hand opened the nightstand drawer for another drink. The quenching fire burned down my throat, giving me the courage to get up. I pushed myself off the bed and shuffled to the closet. The pain was less today, almost manageable. I perused the closet and reached way back on the shelf for a pair of sweats and an oversized shirt. Nothing skin tight. I wanted to hide in the layers and bagginess. Thankfully, I was still in the training program, and we were allowed to dress more casual. I wasn't looking forward to the day I had to wear the rather tight-fitting scrubs. The blue button-down shirt hung from my body, but that was okay. I didn't want anything touching me tightly. I still felt naked and exposed, as loose as my clothes were. A glance in the mirror shocked me. My skin was splotchy and pale, and my hair was oily, but I had no time for a shower today. It would wait. After splashing a little water on my face, I patted it with a towel and decided I didn't care. I hastily pulled my hair up, securing it with a clip, and then I turned out the light and left. Peter was gone. I had no idea when he had left, and I didn't care. The less I saw him, the better. Grabbing a banana from the bar, I picked up my keys from the table and locked the door behind me. My car was sitting right where Peter had said it would be, but my feet didn't want to move to it. Images of where I had gone the last time I sat in it flooded my mind, stirring a feeling of nausea. I closed my eyes and began to count. The sound of my heart pounding in my ears almost drowned out the numbers, but as I neared 50, it began to lessen. My hands stopped shaking, and my feet finally stumbled to the car. I had loved this car. All through college, I had begged my father for a dark blue Mustang, but he had always said no, they were too frivolous. But on my graduation day, it had been waiting for me outside. My fingers touched the door handle, remembering the first day when I had driven it until it completely ran out of gas. My father had had to come and bring me gas, but he had been smiling when he showed up. Images of Raquel and I with the windows down and the music blaring replaced that one, and then images of Peter and I scrunched in the back seat beneath foggy windows. But the image of the clinic lasted longer. The cold sterility of the place invaded my mind, and my hand flew back as if burnt as the memory invaded. I knew I would have to get rid of this car as soon as I could. I'd have to tell my father I needed something more reliable. He would understand, I hoped. After several more minutes and a few deep breaths, I was able to open the door and climb inside. As soon as the door shut, the car began to squeeze in on me and black spots impeded my vision. I dropped my head in my hands and tried to slow my breathing. Just get me to work. That's all I ask. Just get me to work. I can take care of the car after work. The dots faded. My breath slowed and I put the car in drive and headed to the hospital. As I pulled into the parking lot, the panic hit again. Surely everyone would be able to see what I'd done just by looking at me. Why hadn't I called in sick? My pager buzzed and Raquel's number popped up. I had to make it inside before she sent a search party looking for me. Taking a deep breath and swallowing the large lump of fear, I exited the car and forced my feet toward the entrance. Each crack in the sidewalk I passed increased the pounding of my heart in my chest as I crept closer to the door. Beads of sweat broke out on my forehead and tumbled into my eyes, burning. I wiped the sweat away and pulled the door open. The cool rush of air conditioning engulfed me, causing a shiver, but it didn't cool the fever burning inside of me. No one yelled accusations at me, though, and the pounding softened. I kept my head down, weaving my way through the halls to the training room. Sweat had broken out on my palms, even in the cool hospital, and I ran them down my pants before opening the door. Closing my eyes against the onslaught of judgment I knew was coming, I stepped inside. No conversation stopped. No one screamed in horror. Slowly, I opened my eyes. No eyes even looked my direction. Relief flooded my body, and I slunk to an open table at the back of the room. Though no one was staring at me, I still felt exposed, and I shrunk down in my chair as much as possible. Raquel entered the room a few minutes later, and her eyes scanned the tables, widening as we locked glances. She crossed the room quickly. "What happened?" "What do you mean?" I asked, pulling the collar of the shirt even tighter around my neck. Raquel raised an eyebrow. "I mean, you look like crap. There are dark circles under your eyes. Your hair barely looks combed. Did you even shower? And you're wearing clothes 2 sizes too big for you. What's going on?" My eyes dropped to the table as my fingers scratched something on the surface. I wished she'd stop asking. Though I knew it was only because she cared about me, I had no desire to talk about the dirty deed I had done. At least, not yet. "Nothing." A glance out of the corner of my eye indicated she wasn't buying it. "I just didn't sleep well." Raquel pursed her lips and shook her head, but said nothing. I swallowed a tiny sigh of relief. "Look, I know you don't want to talk right now," Raquel said that afternoon when class had ended, "but I'm here if you ever need me." Worry surfaced in her bright green eyes, and tears filled mine in response. The pain, still raw, flared anew. "I'll tell you soon," I said, hugging her and then hurrying out of the hospital and to my car before the floodgates opened. As I closed the door, the tears won and spilled down my cheeks. Would this ever end? As soon as the tears ebbed enough for me to see, I backed the car out, heading to the nearest used car dealership. I parked by the front door, and a man with a pot belly and a mustache came out to greet me. The last button on his Hawaiian shirt didn't cover his enormous belly, and dark hair poked through. The small name badge on his shirt read Jerry. Swallowing my disgust, I wiped my eyes and exited the car. "How can I help you?" he asked, scratching his belly and causing his shirt to rise, exposing even more flesh and hair. I forced my eyes to his face. "I need to trade this car in for something else," I said. He drew his eyes together, tugging on his mustache with thick fingers. "What's wrong with it?" "Nothing. I just want something different." I crossed my arms and rubbed my palms up and down my biceps. "Well, what do you have in mind?" Turning, I scanned the rows of cars. I didn't honestly care, but a small silver 4-door caught my attention. "How about that one?" He followed my finger, and his eyebrows arched up. "You want to trade a Mustang for a Ford Taurus?" "I just want something reliable that won't cost me more than the trade-in. I don't want monthly payments." "Are you sure there's nothing wrong with your car?" He scratched the rotund belly again. "Just memories I no longer want." "Oh, I hear that, little lady." He winked at me. "Okay, follow me and we'll get you set up." I cringed at his word choice and familiar gesture, but followed him inside. The dealership was small and dark, even with rows of windows as the outer wall. A few other smarmy salesmen glanced up as we entered, but no one bothered us. Jerry sat down at a cluttered desk, shoving the papers spread out on his desk onto the floor. A fake potted plant sat behind him, and a picture of what I assumed was his family rounded off the rather impersonal area. I stared at the 2 vinyl chairs across from the desk, afraid of what might be growing on them, but I took a breath and sat down on the very edge, careful to touch as little as possible. 30 minutes and a stack of signed papers later, he handed me the keys to the Ford Taurus, and I exited the stifling building. Opening the car door, I slid inside. The gray interior matched the exterior, giving it a bland, monochromatic look. But it was comfortable, and it looked and smelled clean enough, so as long as it drove fine, I'd consider it a good trade. By the time I got back to the apartment, Peter's car was parked outside. After putting the car in park, I turned off the engine. Do I go in or wait for him to leave? I chewed on my right thumbnail and tapped the steering wheel with my left. Who knows how long he'll stay? I might as well go inside. Sighing, I grabbed my purse, locked the car, and entered the apartment. The smells of dinner accosted me as I stepped inside, and I paused. My stomach rumbled, but was I hungry enough to see Peter? He stepped out of the kitchen just then and stopped short at the sight of me. I made dinner. A feeling of sadness threaded his voice. I hope you'll join me. His eyes darted back and forth across my face, and his normally strong shoulders seemed slumped in defeat. A spark of sympathy flickered in my heart, and I nodded. Yeah? A flicker of hope danced in his eyes. I could only nod again. I didn't trust myself to speak. I followed him into the kitchen and sat down at the table. Peter placed a plate of grilled chicken and vegetables in front of me, and while my fork mechanically brought the food to my mouth, my mind wasn't focused on it. Instead, it was whirring 1,000,000 miles a minute through future possibilities. Can we get over this? Will the guilt go away if I just give it enough time? I could hear the sound of Peter's voice discussing his day, but I couldn't muster much more than a nod or in response. After dinner, I helped with the dishes, but the proximity to Peter began to churn the nausea that had developed in my stomach over dinner, and I quickly retired to the bedroom for the evening. A small drink was enough tonight to quiet the pain, and after returning the bottle to its hiding place, I closed my eyes, letting the darkness overtake me. The sound of crying snapped my eyes open. I slapped the empty bed beside me and shot up. A tiny baby, wrapped in a blue blanket, lay at the foot of my bed. The little hands waved and the tiny mouth wailed. I reached for the baby, but again my arms could do nothing but brush the blanket. The baby stopped crying and turned sad brown eyes on me. The grief in the tiny orbs seared my heart, and tears rolled down my cheek. It must have been a boy then. I'd now had 2 dreams of the baby wearing blue. The baby faded away, but the echo of his cries remained. I pulled the sheet over my head. Go away! It was my choice. I don't need the guilt. The echo slowly tapered off, but sleep was slow in returning. I slapped the alarm the next morning, eyes still closed. When the incessant beeping stopped, I rubbed my eyes. My eyelids felt like stone slabs glued to my face. After getting them open a tiny crack, I pulled the nightstand drawer open and felt around for the bottle. Clasping the neck, I unscrewed the lid and brought the bottle to my lips for my morning ritual. When the fire had burned down my throat and created a nice buzzing in my head, I managed to fully open my eyes and roll out of bed. I shuffled to the closet, but everything still looked too form-fitting, so I threw on another pair of sweats. I cringed at the puffy eyes and the splotchy face staring back at me from the mirror. It was no wonder Raquel had caught on that something was wrong. I wasn't even sure I recognized myself. The hospital loomed a giant steel beast as I pulled into the parking lot, and I dreaded entering. There were too many people, too many eyes. I counted the cracks in the sidewalk this time as I approached, 54, and then the lines in the floor on the way to the training room, 62. I was early enough today that a few tables were empty at the back. I slunk to the farthest one and tried my best to disappear. Uh-oh, was it a bad day? Raquel slid in the chair beside me, looking immaculate as usual in her dress pants and Guess shirt. I stopped chewing my rapidly disappearing thumbnail long enough to nod. "I'll tell you at lunch." Nurse Hatchet entered the room and began her lecture on disposing of needles. I tried to focus on her words, but the image of the baby kept appearing in my mind. "Come on, it's lunch." Raquel nudged my arm, and the baby vanished for the moment. I followed her down the hall, my stomach churning at the thought of telling Raquel what was going on. Raquel had seemed so nonchalant about her abortion. She couldn't have gone through anything like what I was facing. After standing in line for food, we headed to a far table. "You had the abortion, didn't you?" Raquel asked as we sat down. My eyes widened and my jaw dropped. "Is it obvious?" I whispered, glancing around to make sure no one overheard. Raquel's smile was full of sympathy. "To me it is. You've been acting weird, so I figured you must have decided on abortion. You certainly don't have that pregnancy glow about you. But aren't you glad you have your life back?" I dropped my eyes to the Formica tabletop and shook my head. "It's been horrible. The procedure was awful. There was so much pain afterwards, and—" I raised my eyes to her. "I keep hearing a baby cry, but then there's nothing there. But the dreams are the worst." Raquel raised an eyebrow. "Dreams? What dreams?" "Dreams of the baby. He just stares at me and cries, and I reach for him, but I can't ever touch him." "Him?" I shrugged, pushing my food around on my plate. "I guess it's a him. The baby has been in blue both times I saw him, so I'm assuming my baby would have been a boy. Did you ever have dreams?" A vein of fear ignited and began to course through my body. What if there was something really wrong with me? Raquel shook her head slowly. "No, I never had dreams, and I never heard Phantom crying. You probably have just been thinking about it too much. You need to let it go and realize you have your life back now." I nodded, but the words fell on loose sand and blew away. Maybe I was overreacting, but Raquel didn't hear the cries. She didn't see the baby. But she was right. I did need to get on with my life. I had made my choice, and even if I regretted it now, I could do nothing about it. The question was, how did I go on about my life when I was being haunted by my child? Raquel continued to pour affirming words into my head over the next week, and slowly they began to take root. The physical pain was all but gone, and the nights had been blissfully dream-free, thanks to the alcohol coma I practically put myself in at night. I hadn't seen Peter much, but I had even started thinking that maybe we could work it out with time. So I was disappointed when his car wasn't at the apartment when I arrived home that day. As I was locking the car, a small pink ball rolled up to my feet. I picked it up and looked up to see a little girl with brown braids staring back at me. She held her chubby hands out for the ball and smiled. Breath caught in my throat. I tried to smile back, but the grief gripped me and began its vice grip on my body again. A woman carrying a baby approached. "I'm so sorry. Karen, I told you to keep the ball in our yard." As she was speaking, the baby cried, and a tiny hand waved. The dream came flooding back, and I fell to my knees. The pebbles in the asphalt bit into my skin, but I couldn't move. The little girl took a step back, reaching for her mother's hand. "Are you all right?" the woman asked, and pulled her daughter close to her with her free hand. "I'm sorry." My voice was quiet, choked with emotion. I rolled the ball to the girl who scooped it up, and the trio turned quickly, leaving me on my knees in the parking lot. My body shook as the grief took hold once again. The darkness began to cloud my vision until a hand landed firmly on my shoulder. I forced my eyes upward. The same man from a few days before stood beside me, staring down with gentle brown eyes full of concern.
"Can I be of assistance?"
He extended his other caramel hand to help me up, and I accepted. "I'm sorry," I said when I got to my feet. My knees still shook beneath my pants, and cold tendrils gripped my stomach. "Thank you."
"Can I walk you to your door?"
Though I didn't know him, his voice soothed my raw nerves like balm on a burn, and I nodded. I took his arm, grateful for the help, and pointed out my apartment. My hands were still shaking when we reached the door, and the keys tumbled out of my grip to the ground. He picked them up, holding them out to me. I shook my head and pointed to the middle silver key. Understanding my silent request, he inserted the correct key, turned the lock, and opened the door.
"Will you be all right now?"
he asked. I nodded, though his raised eyebrows told me he didn't necessarily agree.
"Okay, well, my name is Henry. I live in 2B. If you ever need anything, you come knock, okay?"
I grasped his hand and squeezed. "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded, and after a final look, he turned away. I entered the apartment, shut the door behind me, and sank to the beige carpeted floor. How was I ever going to get over this? If just seeing a baby sent me into a tailspin, how was I going to continue to be a nurse? As if on cue, the phantom cries started again. I slammed my hands over my ears and rocked back and forth, willing the sound to go away. But instead, the sound grew louder. My heart accelerated and a weight fell on my chest. The air wouldn't come. I clawed at my throat, but the darkness crowded in, pressing down like a vice until it won.
"Sandra? Sandra!"
A hand was shaking my shoulder. I snapped my eyes open, but there was no cry. There was only Peter staring at me with wide, frightened eyes.
"Are you okay?" Peter asked. "What happened?"
"I'm not." My head shook. "I am definitely not okay."